So how hard is it to save a few seeds?
Here's what happens to most gardeners, and this is, we get this, we've done over 30 of those seed schools and graduated more than 700 students from all over the world. And what, as much as anything, what that's done is taught me what people think about gardening and seed saving when they first come to class. And one of the things that I've come to understand is that we, and I'll include myself, because I used to think about a lot of these things the same way. We all have this notion that seed saving is difficult, it takes a lot of time, that we'll never be able to do it as well as big companies or genetically modified, companies do, and that there are a lot of technical things you need to know about minimum populations and isolation distances, to prevent cross-pollination, that we need to preserve purity. These are ideas that come about when you start thinking or reading about seed saving. And what I've learned is that that's all hogwash for home gardeners. All of those concepts are really important if your livelihood depends on your crop. If you're a market gardener, if you're a CSA farmer, if you're an industrial scale or mid-scale farmer, when your crop comes up and it's time to harvest, you have to depend on what that is and the uniformity in that crop so that whoever buys it sees it, as it is labeled. It all looks the same. And we've created a huge industry to make sure that that happens. And those parameters and what you have to learn to do that is really important as far as producing seeds. But none of that, I would argue, none of that applies to home gardeners. You can make all the mistakes you want and still eat. And in fact, when you make mistakes, it gets more fun, as I talked about my peppers, or if something crosses. I saw some really great pictures the other day of broccoli. Well, what's broccoli? Somebody was trying to grow this beautiful old open pollinated variety of broccoli in their garden, Tasico, and it got crossed with a red kale. And so you look at it, and it's a purple broccoli with red kale leaves. Well, what's wrong with that? For me, that was bonus. I mean, if you're a farmer and you're looking for your broccoli crop, you're screwed if some of it looks that way from this cross. But if you're a home gardener, wow. I even saw a Brussels sprout that had little red kale plants coming out of the side where the Brussels sprouts were supposed to come out. These are all the same species plant. We teach this in seed school. They can all cross. But wow, what a bonus. And then, in the end, I like to tell the story of Waltham butternut squash. Waltham butternut squash is the largest selling open pollinated winter squash in the world. There are millions of pounds of seed that are sold every year all over the world. Waltham butternut came from a backyard garden mistake cross about 80 years ago in Pennsylvania. The man who was gardening was an insurance salesman. And he saved the seeds from his own squash, found out it was crossed too late the next year, grew this thing up, and went, wow, I actually like this squash better. His local extension agent at the Waltham Experiment Station agreed with him. They grew it out enough to find some uniformity in it, and they released it as Waltham butternut. And it's still, this is what can happen from mistakes in our backyards. This is what home gardeners should be doing when they save their own seeds.
That's cool. That's our favorite squash here on our farm. So.
There you go. A mistake.
A beautiful mistake, a delicious mistake. So are there any laws about saving seeds? So who can save seeds? Can just anybody?
It goes back as far as any human written law that we can find, the Magna Carta. When mankind first started to codify the behavior that we had. It wasn't just divine right in a king that made up laws, as we go on. But when we started writing things down, it is almost always mentioned that every gardener, every farmer has the right to save their own seeds and do whatever they want. And that was largely the case until 1970 in the United States, during the Nixon administration, when the first plant patenting laws that governed plants that make seeds were initiated. And that body of laws were known as Plant Variety Protection, PVP. So, what they did even in that law was to allow gardeners and farmers to save their own seeds. But for the first time, if you tried to save those seeds and sell them, you would not be able to do that. You would have to work out some deal by the guys or the company that owned that patent. And those patents, of course, expire. Originally, they were after 17 years. I think they're 21 years now. So, up until recently, there's been a new kind of patent that's allowed, a utility patent, which gives more restriction, but you almost never see those. I've never seen a seed available to a home gardener in any of the catalogs that has a utility patent on it. So for our whole universe that we're operating, it's an easy answer. Yes, you can save the seeds. There are no laws, okay? And you can save the seeds and pass them around in your seed exchanges and your seed libraries, even if they're PVP patents, if you happen to see that. And I do see that occasionally in some catalogs.
Mm-hmm. I do.
All right?
That once in a while.
What you can't do is save those seeds and sell them. Okay?
It sounds pretty straightforward. So people don't have to worry about, the GMO gurus coming down on them because they saved some lettuce seeds in the backyard.
Exactly.
Yep. So what is your seed school? Tell me about that.
Well, what happened, I told you a little bit of the beginning of my story at the University of Montana. Several of us came together, started a nonprofit, and started a small-scale seed company. Well, how do you do that? How do you organize a community so that that community can have its own seeds? In those days, there were no seed libraries or seed exchanges, or at least we didn't think about it. So the only real way to do it was to start a small seed company. In those days, there was no internet, so it had to be a small seed catalog company. Well, I looked over and over and over again to find somebody to teach me how to do that. By the time we were doing this in the early 80s, almost all the small companies had already been swallowed up by the pharmaceutical companies, in this huge centralization that's led to 3 companies owning almost everything. It's worse than banks. And so there was really nobody left to teach me. I did find one small seed company in western Montana. It was called Fisher's Garden Seeds. It's still there. Ken Fisher and his wife had been running it for 40 years. They were in their 70s. And I asked Ken Fisher if I could work for him. And he said no. And I said, you don't even have to pay me, Ken. It was like this intern idea. I just need to work there for a few months so I can see how to do this. And he said, we're old. We're set in our ways. My neighbor comes over once a year to help us package. We fill 40 seed racks. I print our own catalogs. We grow and save our own seeds on 5 acres. He goes, be honest, Bill, you just get in the way. He said, I'll answer your questions. And he provided varieties for me. He was invaluable in the first years. He was my mentor. And he was so gracious with his time. But I just couldn't go there and intern. I woke up literally about 30 years later one morning going, oh, my gosh, I have become Ken Fisher. I've been running my own company, my own small company called High Altitude Gardens now for 28 years. I could actually teach somebody how to do this now. I'm still learning. I have a lot of things still to learn about how to do this, but I have a 30 years not to do. And so that was the idea behind Seed School. And so now we've, originally it was a 10-day program. Now it's a 6-day program. We kind of took the best of the permaculture movement and what it's learned. We have a 1-day version of it, Seed School in a day. We have an online version of it now that starts February 9th. People could go to seedsave.org and find a link to sign up for it. What we've done, I took my whole life experience, condensed it down into what is now a 5.5-day program. Those are the seed schools we still teach. We've condensed the best of that down into a 1-day program. We still teach those. You can see where those are all over at seedsave.org. And I took the best of all of that and put it into an online version, which is a 7-week webinar that people can do at their home. And it's like watching a PowerPoint. You can hear my voice live, and then you can ask questions on the air. And that seems to be working pretty well. So that's really what Seed School is my attempt to just pass on what I've learned.
That's great. We need the teachers to teach the next generation, or it dies out like it did before.
I'm really proud.
It's really important.
I'm really proud that 14 of our students from Seed School have their own seed companies, like I did, little ones, little new bioregional seed companies. There's one in Homer, Alaska called Found Root Seeds. There's one in the Bay Area called Living Seeds. There's one in Waco, Texas called Brim Brothers Seeds. And all these people are trying to do the same thing we were trying to do at Garden City Seeds in Montana, is make sure the seeds for the people in that region are best adapted for that region and that they come from that region. It's really a beautifully simple idea. It's great. And then also, I'm really proud of the fact we did a Seed School teacher training this past year and trained 19 new teachers to go out and do their own Seed School teaching. And we're going to do another one of those in Los Angeles in March. And in fact, if you're a teacher and you've been doing teaching about seeds and gardening, you might want to look at that, because we've learned a lot about how to teach teachers how to teach, which is really great.
Nice. Okay, so my mind is still wondering about the most powerful technology is seeds. Can we revisit that?
Yeah. Any gardener who's been around seeds for very long or saved their own feels this. When you hold seeds, and it's been truly transformational to watch in my life the thousands of people that have begun to save their own seeds. Something happens to them. Something happens. It changes them. It's like having children. You can talk about the importance and the power of being a parent. When you have your own kids, everything changes. Something changes. And that's what happens when you begin to save your seeds again. And so what I realized is that, I've learned that we can talk about this now in terms of technology. That when you hold seeds in your hand, you're holding hardware and software rolled into a little package that makes it the most powerful technology you will ever hold in your hand. And people say, well, Bill, how can that be? I've got a cell phone right here, or I've got something else. I've got my beeper. I've got all sorts of other stuff, that's small and technologically, amazing. How can seeds be that incredible? And my answer is this. When you have seeds, put them in a clay jar and let them and store them for 600 years. Store them for 2,000 years. Store them even for 60 years. In many cases now we know you could take them back out and they work. Do that with your cell phone. Put it in a clay jar for 60 years and see if it works, okay? So we know it's more durable. It's living, breathing embryos, And the other thing is, think about this. Inside every seed are millions of more seeds, packed, literally, hardware and software into each seed. When you have a cell phone, all you have is your cell phone. That's it, people. Seeds are self-replicating. And not only are they self-replicating, but they can take information from their immediate environment, cycle through their life, incorporate those changes back up into their own DNA, and then store them again in seed form for maybe another 60 years. We don't have any technology that is self-replicating that way, and certainly no intelligent self-replication that could adapt itself to circumstances once it becomes alive. That would be artificial intelligence. We don't have anything like that. We may never have anything like that. So the next time you pick up a handful of seeds, think about this. You can put those seeds in your front pocket, like I did when I was in Siberia in 1989. And you can walk anywhere you want on this beautiful planet. I happened to walk back to Ketchum, Idaho, and you can create a whole new agriculture with what's in your pocket. I happen to bring back 60 varieties of Siberian tomatoes, many of which are still in circulation in hundreds of seed companies and catalogs around the planet. I was the first one to bring those to the West from behind the Iron Curtain. And they got there because I put them in my front pocket and walked through customs in 1989. You think about the energy and the lives that have been affected in high, cold, short-growing season places all over the planet when hundreds, if not thousands, if not tens of thousands of gardeners were first able to grow a tomato in their cold climate and eat it, and it was good tasting. I know this from my own experience. This is the power every seed has when you hold it in your hand. So think about this when you start to get involved in this. Literally, every seed you hold has this potential.
Well, I've grown those Siberian tomatoes. Thank you for bringing those, because we're at 5,700 feet, and our outdoor season is very short. That is so cool. Yeast and be Jesus. You're me people. That's me growing up in a cold, hard place, you know, and trying to find good stuff to eat there. So thank you for the work you do. And I always acknowledge the Siberian gardeners that created all these varieties. I didn't create all this stuff. I just got to carry them. But every time you carry seeds, that's what you're carrying is everybody else's work. It's really beautiful. So tell me what a seed library is.
A seed library is a place in your local community where you can go down and check out seeds for free, the way you would a book. And you go, wait a minute, I'm supposed to check the book back in. How do I check in seeds? Well, it's that simple. If and when you can, you plant it, learn how to save the seeds, and then check in twice as much. You know, this is a 1,000-year-old idea from India. No farmer was ever denied seeds. They're always free. You give seeds to whoever needs them, and if and when they can, they check in twice as much. They return twice as much. And so this idea has taken off around the world in the last 3.5 years. This is a way that gardeners all over the world, and especially in the United States, have responded to this great uniformity and centralization of our seed industry. I just checked the other day, there are 500 seed libraries registered on seedlibraries.org if you want to go and see how many. And more than 400 of those libraries are in the United States. And so you can go there and find out if there's one in your neighborhood. If there isn't, start one. And you can find a link. My favorite place is to go to a website called richmondgrowseeds.org. And that's the website that Rebecca Newburn, she was one of the first people to put a seed library, in a regular library. And she's got a little link on that webpage that says Start a Seed Library. And you can click on that, and all the forms, all the printable little packet labels, all the stories, even YouTubes telling you how to do this. And maybe I could almost interpolate and say most of the seed libraries, the 500 seed libraries, started around the world, started from her instructions. She's a middle school science teacher in California. Did a really great job. This is grassroots at its best. And so start your own seed library where you are. And if you can't organize to start a seed library, start a more temporary version of it, a seed exchange. Have a big potluck dinner seed exchange in your town. Invite all the gardeners to bring their seeds and exchange them with everybody else that's there. It's like a seed library where everybody's there on the same day. These are getting really popular. In fact, in Canada, it's become a cultural event. They're called Seedy Saturdays. And you can't go to a city in Canada now and live there very long before there's a seedy Saturday. You can go down, even if you've only saved seeds from one thing in your garden, you can go and exchange that for all the other things you need. And what an incredible advantage. When you move to a new town, think about what has to happen now. You don't know what grows there, so you find yourself buying things from catalogs. You bring in the seeds, and almost everyone I know that moves to the Mountain West, to say Paonia, or moves to the desert Southwest, say to Tucson, their first year they fail. You know, it's because they're not growing the right varieties. Now people all over the United States can go to a seed exchange or a seed library in their town and check out seeds from varieties that have been saved and adapted to their own region. What you're doing is piggybacking on the momentum, the 10,000-year momentum of saving seeds from those that do best right where you are. Instead of starting all over again and bringing in seeds from thousands of miles away, they have no idea about how to grow where you are. It's that simple. So I love seed libraries. In fact, you know, I was quoted in a book by Dr. Gary Nabin where I said, you know, when you think about it, the word seed and the word library combined in the United States may give us our best chance to survive in this world of industrialized, monocropped, uniform agriculture. This is the tool that could save us.
We have a seed library here in Paonia, so that's pretty neat because we're a little small town, but we got so many organic farmers.
Good
it's
for
a
you.
great thing to have.
Good for you.
So
Yeah.
you talk about seed libraries could save us. Save us from what?
Well, let me just, you know, as somebody pointed out to me the other day, most Americans live in a town or city right now where there is less than 3 days worth of food in the grocery stores. God forbid something happen. Big Katrina type event. We've got new land storms now that are 2 Category 5 tornadoes that are 80 miles wide, 200-mile-an-hour winds. God forbid something happens to your food supply line into your town because there just isn't much food there. And so the gardeners immediately go, oh, my gosh, well, you know, we could always do some gardening and grow some of our own food. The sad fact is, in most of our metropolitan areas especially, there's no seed. There is no seed for you. Or if there is any seed, there's from hybrids, which would take you on this longer journey to try to find, you know, the good things that you could save seeds from. There just aren't any seeds. And so most of the seeds, if you know, I challenge everyone, go to your farmer's market right now. The good people that have learned to grow enough food on a smaller mid-scale for our CSAs and our farmers markets, go ask those folks where they get their seeds. I did this in the Rocky Mountains for the last 2 summers. Bella and I traveled 5,000 to 7,000 miles this summer. That's my job now at the Rocky Mountain Seed Alliance, is to find all the people that are starting to wake up to do this so that we can have all of our region seeds from our region. And the answer you get from the farmers market farmers is uniform. Well, I get them from Territorial. I get them from Johnny's. I get them from High Mowing. Most of them come from a seed company thousands of miles away. That's just the reality. Those are the people that are serving that market. And those seeds, many, if not most, of the certified organic hybrids that these people are buying, many are now patented, and a huge number of those are coming from Europe. There are 2 companies in Europe now supplying that market. So how does that help self-reliance? How does that help local food when the seeds that are driving our local food movement are coming from seed companies thousands of miles away that are getting them from Europe? The fact is, contrast that with what would happen if the majority of those seeds came from our own seed library. That if our grid, for God forbid, ever goes down, immediately people go, well, we've got thousands of varieties of seeds, if not hundreds, and we got a lot of it right here in our own city. Sure, we don't know if all the stuff that's been checked into our seed library is uniform or if it hasn't crossed, but guess what? We can start selecting out and making those things more uniform. All of a sudden, we have a diverse seed depository in every town and city in America, and that's where we're headed. As I said, 500 seed libraries in 3.5 years. We haven't seen a grassroots movement politically like this since the Civil Rights Movement or the free speech movement of the 60s. We are in a different time right now, and I'm so happy that it's happening around seeds. I just love what's happening around seeds and seed libraries.
Yeah, and the other piece is, okay, let's say that the farmers are all buying their seeds in. They don't know how to save them, but when you have a seed library, you also have the knowledge of how to replicate that seed within the library itself, because you got the people there on the ground in your community that can replicate the seed. That gives me goosebumps.
And what we're trying to do is get ahead of the curve. So one of the things at the Rocky Mountain Seed Alliance, one of our #1 programs is to organize and educate seed stewards. These are people that would be, say, in Paonia, somebody would want to be a seed steward. And we'll get them the extra training so that when the farmers in your area want to start growing some seeds, I mean, face it, they're all busy. We don't blame anybody for not saving their own seeds. Most of our farmers are working overtime anyway. But there are ways that they could partner with somebody who could do the seed piece or help them add the seed-saving piece to their already operational farms so that it's good for them and it's good for the library or, say, a new small seed company that could partner with them around this work. And that's what we're trying to get started.
I like that, because that's the problem I run into is I don't have enough production space to produce food, but then to set some of the production space aside to produce seed cuts the bottom line from what I can sell that summer. That's a good idea.
Right. So start with the things that it's easy to leave or things that could be moved to the outside. Our famous story is about a farmer in New York, 200-acre market gardener, who had a small seed company approach him about growing seeds for them. He said, too busy, too complicated. Mm-hmm. And that fall, he called them back up and said, hey, you guys want to come over and look at this? And so they went back over to his farm, and he had an acre of red Russian kale. He had planted it late in the year. He was hoping to get a baby kale crop off it just before the winter came. Well, winter came, and he didn't. It wasn't up enough to cut. So he said, so I could plow this under. I was getting ready to do it, and I thought about you people. I could leave this. It could go to seed early next spring. I don't have time to harvest the seed, but if you guys will select out and harvest the seed, I'll split it with you. That's the deal they worked out. And so they spent a couple of days walking through the field and roguing all the off-types. He wanted big leaves that were really frilly and dark purple. So everything that didn't look like they'd pulled. Next spring it came up, went to seed. They got pounds and pounds and pounds of seed off it. They have more seed for red Russian kale in their seed company than they ever could have dreamed. It's all organic. It's selected. It's adapted to their region. And he has enough red Russian kale seed in his hopper, selected, adapted to his field. He'll never have to buy it again. Wow. This is the kind of deals that we need to start making with farmers and move this into local seed production.
Yes. Yeah, get some help to get those seeds selected and saved. So your work has helped so many, and there are many of us who would like to see you continue. So how can anyone listening stay involved in your work?
Well, I would recommend that they go to RockyMountainSeeds.org and sign up and become a member. It's free. You can sign up for our email list. We don't ever share it, and we'll only send you important information. So RockyMountainSeeds.org, especially if you live in the Rocky Mountains. for those outside that region that want to follow up on educational opportunities especially, go to seedsave.org, and you can find out about all of the events that we speak at and all of our seed schools in a day, our seed schools, our seed school teacher training, and maybe most importantly now, our seed school online. And we do some free webinars leading up to that. We have one coming up soon. So seedsave.org and RockyMountainSeeds.org.
That's great. So I want to thank you for taking the time to join me on the show today. This has been fantastic.
Well, thank you. Thank you for what you do. I can't wait. I'm a long time fan of High Country News. And one of the things everybody who reads that does is comes to Paonia and checks in. So when we do, we make sure we check in with you.
Yeah, you can come out. I'll show you the farm. It'll be fun.
Yeah, it would be great. So thank you.
For those of you listening, to learn more about Bill McDorman and Seed School, you can click on the links in the description below or by visiting seedsave.org. It was a pleasure to have you on the show today.
Thank you.